Handcuffs. At sunset, a black woman standing still. Police lights flicker off the side of a rental car. She doesn't resist, doesn't yell. Both hands on the wheel, just like she was trained. This car's reported stolen. Driver matches the description. Black. Alone. She hands over her papers. He smirks. Military ID? In old jeans. And then, he cuffs her. Right there on the side of the road. No questions. No cause. But what he didn't know was that the woman was Lieutenant General Naomi Gresham. 32 years of service. Commander of thousands. A war hero who once ordered rescue missions behind enemy lines. And now, labeled a suspect. One tap on her watch. Code Black activated. And the entire U.S. military system began to respond. So let me ask you, if she wasn't a general, if there was no video, would your state protect the truth or bury it? Don't blink. This story won't let you stay silent. Saturday afternoon. Golden sunset poured down across County Route 18, slicing through the quiet suburbs of Halston Ridge, Georgia. A silver Chevrolet Impala, rented from Crestfield Airport, rolled steadily past sun-scorched cornfields. Inside, Lieutenant General Naomi Gresham, 52 years old, kept her hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, just as she had taught her cadets years ago. Her calm eyes, shaded behind dark sunglasses, reflected familiar memories. The old oak grove where she used to play hide-and-seek with her sister Rachel. The chipped stone marker that still read, "Welcome to Halston Ridge," since the Gulf War days. Naomi wore dark jeans, a plain white shirt, and worn silver New Balance sneakers. No uniform, no insignia, just a regular woman heading home to attend her niece Eden's graduation. And yet, she still carried the presence of a commander. Upright posture, sharp gaze, and a quiet dignity forged through 27 years of service in the harshest places on earth. She had just left Harper & Sons Tailors, where old Mrs. Harper, older than Main Street itself, still called her Little Naomi when red and blue lights suddenly flared behind her. A Halston Ridge police SUV sped up to her bumper, then lit up the sirens. Naomi hadn't been speeding. She hadn't switched lanes abruptly. She glanced at the clock. 6:42 p.m. Still early. She signaled right, pulled over beside a cornfield, shut off the engine, rolled down the window, and placed both hands visibly on the wheel. Flawless. Measured. By the book. Two white officers approached. The first was tall, bearded, and stone-faced. His badge read Halvorsen. The second was younger, lankier, and visibly unsure. Draper. "Ma'am," Halvorsen barked. "Step out of the vehicle." "Now," Naomi responded calmly, but firmly. "Officer, may I ask the reason for this stop? I haven't violated any traffic laws. We receive a report of a stolen vehicle, same make and model." Draper cut in, voice shaky. "Driven by a black woman." Naomi gave a small nod and slowly reached for her wallet from the passenger seat. "I can provide the rental agreement, my license, and my military ID." Halvorsen didn't glance at the papers. He smirked. "Military ID? You, General?" Naomi replied, eyes locked on his. "Lieutenant General Naomi Gresham, United States Army. I've served from Somalia to Afghanistan. You're welcome to confirm that with the Department of Defense." Halvorsen burst into laughter. "Well, would you look at that? General Oprah, back in town. Never seen a general in rental wheels and jeans." Then he pulled out his cuffs. "Out of the car. Now, don't make me drag you." Naomi exhaled, eyes steady. She stepped out, her bearing still unmistakably military. When the cuffs clicked around her wrists, she didn't scream. She didn't resist. She only said one thing. "You're breaking the law." Across the road, behind a cluster of wild bushes, a young black man, about 20, had been walking home. His name was Darnell Washington. He froze, hands trembling. Darnell pulled out his phone and began recording the surreal scene. "Hey," Halvorsen shouted. "You, give me that phone." "I'm just recording," Darnell stammered. "I didn't do anything." The crack of the phone smashing under a boot rang out like a cold slice of steel through the summer air. But what Halvorsen didn't know, the video had already been uploaded to the cloud. And with just a light tap on the back of the vehicle, Naomi triggered the emergency protocol from her military watch. Silently, the encrypted signal raced toward Valor Command HQ. The lesson Naomi had once taught to young officers: discipline, endurance, and justice. She would now have to prove it herself, not on a battlefield, but on the very soil she once called home. At Valor Command HQ, a fortified military center nestled deep within the hills of Fort Marlow, Virginia. Cold LED lights glowed off rows of real-time surveillance screens. At 7:03 p.m., the emergency alert system let out 3 sharp beeps, then turned red. Code Black. Emergency protocol triggered by a sitting lieutenant general. Retrieval code: Gresham Alpha Delta. Location: Halston Ridge, Georgia. Timestamp: 6:44 and 17 seconds p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Colonel Sarah Lindstrom, currently on duty, shot up from her station, face pale. She slammed the emergency comm button. Brigadier General Voss. We have a code black. The sender is Naomi Gresham. Within 90 seconds, Brigadier General Caleb Voss, a man whose life Naomi had saved during Operation Waypoint in Helmand, entered the crisis room. He didn't ask why. He simply stared at the coordinates flashing on the digital map, then turned to the Rapid Response Unit. Contact the NSA. Call Phoenix Cell. Begin signal surveillance in Halston Ridge. I want the satellite to pivot observation within 5 minutes. No one in the room said a word. Everyone understood one thing. Lieutenant General Naomi Gresham doesn't trigger code black over nothing. And if she was in danger on U.S. soil, then something had already gone way too far. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles to the south, inside a small 2-bedroom apartment in the Shia Satin housing complex, a soft ping echoed from the laptop of Marcus Boone, a sophomore tech student and Darnell Washington's best friend. "You're super late," Marcus muttered, eyes still glued to his screen. "Your mom's been calling." Darnell walked in, still holding the shattered phone. "Cops in Halston Ridge stopped me," he said. "They cuffed this older black lady, said she was driving a stolen car. But you know what? She said she was a lieutenant general. I saw her ID clear as day." Marcus snapped around. "You got it on video?" Darnell nodded, pulling out a tiny SD card from a phone case. "Phone's busted. But right before that, I saw it sync to iCloud for a few seconds. It might have saved." Marcus immediately plugged in the card. As the video loaded, the first frame stunned them both. Naomi Gresham, short cropped hair, dignified stance, even in cuffs. Red police lights flashing against the car window. "Holy Isich," Marcus whispered. She didn't resist, didn't touch anyone. "And they still—" "Post it," Darnell said. "Right now." Marcus uploaded the clip across every platform he could. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, with the hashtags. #LadyInCuffs. #Justice for Gresham. #Halston Ridge Exposed. Within just 10 minutes, the video had already drawn over 30,000 views. A major military account reposted it with the caption, "This is Lieutenant General Naomi Gresham. Don't tell me this is just an administrative mistake." At Valor Command, mobile tracking data from Halston Ridge showed stable traffic. But the silver Chevy Impala had not moved from its last known coordinates. "She's at the police station," one analyst reported. "She's been taken to Halston Ridge Police Department." General Voss turned to the intelligence team. "She's a lieutenant general. If she's being held without cause, that's a serious violation, possibly criminal." His voice dropped low. "I once promised her, after she dragged me out of a burning Humvee straight through enemy fire, that if she ever needed backup, I wouldn't be late by a single second." He turned to his aide. "Prep the jet. We leave Fort Marlow in 45 minutes. Target, Halston Ridge." Back at the Halston Ridge station, Naomi sat in a bear-holding cell, unaware that the video had gone viral, unaware that a storm was beginning to form. She simply stared at her left forearm, where a faded Ranger tab tattoo rested, worn by time, and closed her eyes. Outside, an entire power structure had begun to shift. And this time, she wasn't on a foreign battlefield. She was in the heart of America. Inside the break room of the Halston Ridge Police Department, a wall-mounted TV played the local news. scrolling boldly across the bottom of the screen. Viral video. Handcuffed woman believed to be high-ranking military officer. Officer Brent Halvorsen tossed his half-eaten slice of pizza into the trash. "Damn kids these days, always stirring something up," he muttered, rubbing his hands like he was getting ready to brag. "She looked me straight in the eye," he chuckled, raising his voice, "and said she was a lieutenant general. I told her, 'General, huh? Then you know how to stand still when given an order.' And she did exactly that." Laughter echoed from a few lazy officers in the corner. The overnight shift types. The ones who played cards, swapped bad jokes, and sometimes made sport of mocking civilians. In one corner, Officer Nia Tucker, 26, barely 7 months, out of the academy, sipped cold coffee. She didn't laugh, didn't scowl, but her heart slowed like something wasn't right. She'd seen that woman up close when they brought her in. She didn't look like a troublemaker, no matter what Halvorsen claimed. Her posture was upright. Her gaze was steady. She didn't resist. And when Nia passed by, that woman's eyes sent a chill down her spine. The same look her grandfather, a Vietnam vet, used to get. When he spoke about honor and dignity. "Hey, Tucker," Halvorsen called over his shoulder, his tone somewhere between a joke and a warning. "Been here 5 minutes and already think your internal affairs, huh?" She smiled politely, didn't respond. Later, after the crowd had thinned, Nia quietly made her way back to the holding area. Inside, Naomi Gresham still sat motionless on the cold metal bench. Her back rested against the wall. Her hands lay calmly on her knees, her gaze fixed on the cracked ceiling above. They looked at each other for a few seconds. Naomi said nothing, but Nia gave a small nod, a silent gesture that said, "I saw it." Then she turned back toward the records room. At her desk, Nia pulled up the intake file. Naomi Gresham's temporary holding record was riddled with errors. Misspelled name. Reason for arrest listed as suspicious behavior. No verification of her ID, even though she provided it. Nia glanced around. No one else was in the room. She pulled out her phone and opened the voice recording app. The door slammed open. "What are you recording?" Officer Neil Draper stepped in, trailing the smell of sweat and patrol car grease. "Just checking last night's records," Nia said calmly. "Looks like some info wasn't updated." Draper avoided eye contact. He looked tense, pale. "Halvorsen told me not to change anything," he muttered. "Said leave it that way, to be safe." "Safe for who?" Nia asked gently. Her tone never changed. Draper shook his head, swallowed hard. "I don't know. I just did what I was told." That night, in her small apartment on Riverside View, Nia plugged a USB stick into her personal laptop. She backed up everything: the security footage, the arrest records, and the audio she'd just recorded. She saved the file as incident_Gresham_HALR001. Then she began to type an email. To Sarah Williams. Subject: I think you should see this. Don't attach my name, at least not yet. Sarah had been her roommate back at the academy. Now she worked as an investigative journalist for the Crestfield Ledger. They once dreamed of changing the system from the inside. But tonight, Nia realized, to change it, you have to face it first. Elsewhere, the video of Naomi in handcuffs had passed 1.2 million views. The hashtags #Justice for Gresham and #Honor in Cuffs were trending nationwide. And those at Valor Command HQ, the ones who knew Naomi Gresham better than anyone, were moving toward Georgia like a thunderstorm building at sea. Halston Ridge didn't know it yet, but its mask was about to come off. At the emergency coordination room inside Valor Command HQ, the fluorescent lights never dimmed. Major Caleb Voss, 38 years old, intelligence officer, a scar stretching across his left jawbone, leaned over the mission table, his eyes locked onto a digital map projected across the wall. Traffic cameras in Halston Ridge went dark between 6:46 and 7:12 p.m. A tech reported. Even stranger, all footage from the town's server has been wiped. Voss clenched his jaw. No one deletes every surveillance feed over a vehicle mix-up, not unless they're hiding something bigger. He pulled up the internal network files of the Halston Ridge Police Department. Scrolled up, scrolled down, then stopped. This one, Voss pointed at the screen. Brent Halvorsen. 3 excessive force complaints in the last 6 years. All insufficient evidence to prosecute. Then he switched screens. And this guy, he gestured toward Officer Draper's profile. Clean record, but he's been browsing the Iron Spire Echo board recently. Far-right forum? His aide asked. Not just far-right. That's a known recruitment ground for Dominion Strategic Services. At the same time, inside a civil rights law office in Crestfield, Georgia, Malcolm Train, a former corporate lawyer turned civil liberties advocate, was reviewing a stream of encrypted files just received from an anonymous source. His computer beeped steadily as the decryption process neared completion. Jeremiah, his assistant, called out, still used to his old name. I just verified these transactions. A payment of $425,000 was wired from Dominion Strategic to the Halston Ridge Police Union's Legal Defense Fund. Just 1 week before Lieutenant General Gresham's arrest. Malcolm furrowed his brow. A private security firm funding a small-town police union? That doesn't add up. Meanwhile, 900 miles west, deep inside Pecos Basin, Texas, a remote training facility hosted an urban tactical simulation for law enforcement officers from 3 different states. No flags, no badges. A row of sand-colored SUVs parked outside a steel complex. No plates, only tiny QR codes etched onto the tinted glass. The lead instructor, Colt Renner, a former SEAL operator dishonorably discharged for violating humanitarian protocols, now recruited by Dominion Strategic Services, standing on the Red Dust training ground. He pointed to a mock-up of a neighborhood block. No questions, no negotiations. If the subject resists, drop the weapon first. Ask later. Next to him, a lineup of paper targets showed suspect profiles, all depicting black or brown men in hoodies, standing beside old cars or in dimly lit alleys. A young officer from Polk County, Florida, hesitated. What if the surveillance cameras catch it? Colt smirked. Dominion knows how to clean things up. When you're in uniform, every piece of evidence becomes reasonable suspicion. Trust me, we write the rules in courthouse hallways. Behind a compound, a reinforced truck was unloading crates of non-standard gear. High-impact rubber rounds, overcharged tasers, and unapproved biometric detection systems sprayed faintly across the truck's cabin. For internal reinstatement exercises only, DSS. This wasn't just wrong. It was a breadcrumb trail. Malcolm opened the file on Dominion Strategic Services, a private military contractor long rumored to provide counter-subversion tactics to multiple southern police departments. Then his eyes froze. There it was, a name in the company's board of advisors, General Silas Corwin, Naomi Gresham's former commanding officer, once honored at West Point, now seated on Dominion's Strategic Council. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., inside a luxury apartment with glass windows, facing the Potomac River, a meeting was taking place in complete silence. Senator Byron Langston, 64 years old, navy blue suit, gold watch, a smile that felt pre-programmed, sipped his whiskey like he was just discussing real estate trends. I told Silas already. She came back home just to attend a graduation. Nothing major. But that video, that kid, it should have been handled, the man across from him replied, his face hidden in shadow, but his voice carried the scent of danger. Next time, we don't let a leak happen. Falcon's already watching. Langston set his glass down. His eyes darkened. At Dominion's headquarters in Savannah, Georgia, Elias Rudd, an internal security engineer, was silently logging access patterns. Over the past few weeks, he'd noticed something strange. A high-level admin account had been repeatedly accessing the Halston Ridge Police Training Database, including facial recognition data of Naomi Gresham, before the incident ever occurred. We've been tracking her, Elias whispered, sweat soaking his back. He copied the system logs onto a personal hard drive, hid it behind an old framed painting in his office, and dialed a number he'd never dared call before. Lieutenant Colonel Gresham, I think I have something you need. Back in Halston Ridge, Naomi looked up through the small frosted steel window of her cell. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Dark silhouettes began to move. This wasn't just a wrongful arrest. This wasn't just about racial profiling. It was a plan, a network, a targeted operation. And this time, the target had triggered the alarm. In a modest hotel room in downtown Crestfield, Georgia, Lieutenant General Naomi Gresham stood still in front of the mirror. Her dress uniform, crisp and perfectly pressed, hung neatly beside the bed. But she hadn't put on. Instead, she wore a plain white shirt and held a handwritten letter. Social media was exploding over the video of her arrest. Her phone buzzed nonstop with messages from former cadets, fellow officers, and military families across the country. "We saw you. Stand tall, General. Don't let them bury you like they did so many others." CNN had called. 60 Minutes had booked a segment. But what made Naomi Gresham nod wasn't the lights or cameras. It was the letter from a young female officer, handwritten, with a printed photo from a tampered case file. "My name is Nia Tucker. I work at Halston Ridge. I can't stay silent anymore." Naomi folded the letter, placed it on the desk, and made a call. "Malcolm, set up the press briefing. But I want to meet with Nia first. And call Owen. I need someone who knows how this game works from the inside." Exactly 1 week later, Naomi appeared live on national television in a special interview with Anderson Cooper. She wore her full dress uniform. The medals on her left chest shimmered beneath the studio lights. "General Gresham," Anderson began, "do you believe what happened to you was just a misunderstanding or something far more serious?" Naomi didn't hesitate. "I believe this is the result of a culture that's grown too comfortable never being questioned. And when the person they mistreat happens to be a black woman, whether she wears stars on her shoulder or not, their gaze doesn't change. So, what do you plan to do next?" Naomi looked straight into the camera. "I didn't come home to fight, but if a fight is what's needed, then this time I'll fight right here on my own soil." The next day, Naomi was invited to speak at the graduation ceremony of officer cadets at Iron Watch Academy, one of the nation's most prestigious military institutions. She stepped onto the podium to thunderous applause. But when the clapping faded, her voice rose, low and steady. Some battles aren't in the tactical manual. There's no map, no commanding officer, only what's right, and those willing to step out of line to defend it. She recounted the moment she was handcuffed in Halston Ridge, but she didn't speak in anger. She spoke with quiet sorrow, not for herself, but for every soul who never had a camera rolling when it happened to them. When the law becomes a tool for suppression instead of protection, none of us get to stay on the sidelines. Not generals, not civilians, no one. The ceremony ended in the deepest silence. And then, applause erupted, slow at first, then rising, echoing across the Academy Square. In a nameless bar on the edge of Arlington, a man in a gray hoodie and beanie sipped bourbon alone. He didn't speak to anyone, but when Naomi's speech replayed on the bar's TV, he gave a quiet nod. Cason Ward, known by the codename Falcon, had never met Naomi in person. But that night, he pulled a small hard drive from his coat pocket, set it gently on the bar, and called a taxi. 1 day later, Naomi received a package at her hotel. No return address, just a single handwritten line. What's inside could save lives or make you disappear. Choose your moment wisely. F. She opened the drive. Inside was an encrypted data cache, transaction maps linking Dominion Strategic Services to a network of small-town police departments across the South, and to the political offices of Senator Byron Langston. The storm hadn't hit yet, but the radar was lighting up, and Naomi Gresham, no longer a victim, was fast becoming the spearhead of a movement this country had never seen before. Wednesday night, 2:17 a.m., Officer Nia Tucker shot out of bed, jolted by the neighbor's dog barking furiously, and the acrid scent of smoke drifting in from her kitchen window. She ran to the porch and froze. In the middle of her front lawn, a 6-foot wooden cross was ablaze, a demonic torch against the dark quiet of suburban Halston Ridge. On her garage door, scrawled in blood-red spray paint, "Don't sell out your own." The paint still dripped, like blood that hadn't yet dried. Nia ran, shaking, not from fear, but because she knew exactly what this was. A warning, not from strangers, but from within the department. From people who wore the same uniform, stood in the same formation, shared the same night shifts. Local police were called to the scene, but when a responding officer turned out to be Halvorsen, his reaction was a smug half-smile. Could be some bored kids. You know, not everyone likes it when a young officer talks to the press. In Washington, D.C., Eden Gresham, Naomi's 17-year-old niece, was walking home from a student justice and equality club, where she had just read her viral essay. My aunt is a general, but they still arrested her like she was nobody. The post had crossed 2.5 million shares in just 48 hours. On her way home, a black SUV tore around the corner, accelerating toward her. But before it could close in, a patrol car with flashing red lights swerved into its path, blocking it cold. Officer Maria Santos, stationed with the Capitol Protection Unit, stepped out, her hand already on her holster. Exit the vehicle. Hands on the hood. Now. The SUV reversed and sped away. But not before security cameras captured the full license plate. Eden leaned against the wall, breath shallow, heart pounding like war drums. She didn't cry, but her eyes had changed. The next day, Naomi received a text from a scrambled, unfamiliar number. Virginia's not responding. Check on her immediately. Naomi drove 40 miles into the suburbs of Alexandria, to the secluded home of Eleanor Price, once a legendary CIA analyst, nicknamed the Human Decoder. Her house was lined with antique books, classified folders, and maps of power networks. When Naomi arrived, the porch light was still on, but no one answered. She picked the lock, an old habit. It took under 20 seconds. Virginia lay slumped in a recliner, head tilted, eyes shut, like she just dozed off. But Naomi's instincts didn't miss. Virginia's heart had stopped. The official autopsy later read, cause of death, sudden cardiac arrest. Victim had a pacemaker implant. But Naomi had been in this game too long. Pacemakers don't just glitch. Right after someone leaks sensitive intel. At Dominion Strategic Services HQ in Savannah, Georgia, General Silas Corwin stood inside a dim, sealed war room. Low ceiling, soundproof walls, no light but the faint buzz of halogens. Across from him sat a familiar face, Senator Byron Langston, and a third man, known only as the General. She's becoming a symbol, Langston muttered, pouring whiskey. The kind we can't control. The General's voice was metallic. Cold. Then we need a long-term solution. Silas nodded. An accident during a tactical response simulation. Maybe an explosion in the weapons bay. Langston raised an eyebrow. Can we wipe the record clean? Silas smirked. We erased the colonel's file back in 2009. Gresham won't be harder than that. That night, Naomi sat in her hotel study, staring out the window. Outside, a soft rain tapped rhythmically against the tin roof. Before her lay two reports. One forensic, one technical, sent anonymously by a hacker. Both confirmed the same thing. Virginia's pacemaker had been remotely tampered with via Bluetooth. Naomi closed her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, her lips moved. Not to speak, but to pray. Not for herself, but for the fallen, and for those still unaware. She wasn't backing down. The next morning, deep beneath Arlington, Virginia, at Fort Lexner Strategic Analysis Center, inside a hexagon-shaped underground compound, Naomi Gresham stepped into a secure briefing room. She had received an emergency alert from the Defense Department's encrypted relay system. Waiting for her was Falcon, Cason Ward, rain jacket zipped to the collar, his face pale and hard like frost on a military tarmac. He placed a specialized drive case on the table, designed to unlock only with a 20-character passcode and biometric scan. Naomi didn't ask questions. She just looked him in the eye. Cason spoke. I can't keep this anymore. But you can. You're the reason I'm still alive after the Basra raid. This is me returning the favor. The only way I know how. Naomi opened the case. Inside were encrypted audio files. Covert recordings of Senator Byron Langston, General Silas Corwin, and Major General Preston Kane, captured from within the Dominion Strategic Services network. over the last 6 months. If that woman won't stay silent, we'll give them a reason to hold a funeral in her honor. Kane's voice, cold as a gunshot behind closed doors. I don't want an honorable funeral. I want her off the political map. Langston's voice, like someone placing a bid on a human life. Naomi didn't blink. She turned to Kaysen and spoke calmly. Call Owen and Jeremiah. It's time to reactivate what they used to call Delta Zero Response Unit. This isn't about civil rights anymore. This is treason. That afternoon, Jeremiah Cole, commander of the Independent Military Intelligence Division, submitted a confidential report to the Federal Security Council. Inside was a financial laundering map, linking Sovereign Security Solutions, First Dominion Bank of Georgia, and 3 fake law organizations claiming to protect police rights. In truth, they were fronts, shielding rogue officers and flipping victims into suspects. We're not just dealing with bad actors, Jeremiah said. We're facing a 3-headed alliance: political power, shadow military, and dirty finance. If we don't cut all 3, we're just renaming the same snake. Right after the meeting, Naomi was summoned to a private high-security office. Inside, only one other person, Lucian Graves, veteran FBI operative, and the first to warn her about Sovereign. He handed her what looked like a silver lighter, but when opened, it played a barely audible recording. President Harmon won't get involved, but if Gresham keeps stirring things up, he'll sign the dismissal order for the sake of national stability. Naomi's voice dropped. Her eyes didn't waver. Does he know about the assassination plot? Lucian nodded. He knows, but there's no direct proof he gave the order. He chose to stay out of it and let the storm swallow the one who dared walk against the wind. Naomi clenched her fist. Then we'll bring the storm to him. 3 days later, at Redstone Tactical Command, Special Response Unit Sigma Echo was activated. 12 soldiers from the Joint Task Force, authorized to work across agencies, unbound by state-level restrictions. Naomi stood before them. No slogans, no promises, just one sentence. If we don't clean this system from the inside, no one else will. They began by raiding the financial branch office of Sovereign in Charlotte, a facility guarded like a military-grade data vault. There, they recovered a list of recurring shadow transactions, tying over 37 high-ranking officials to illegal money flows from private security firms based in Texas, Florida, and South Carolina. At the same time, Falcon quietly uploaded the encrypted audio to a secure server in Iceland. The video spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed across every major network. U.S. Senator accused of plotting to assassinate U.S. Army Lieutenant General. The nation shook. Congress demanded an emergency hearing. Naomi knew she had crossed the line. There was no turning back. Only one path now. Forward, until the system bowed to the truth. Monday, 8 a.m. Federal Courthouse, Atlanta, Georgia. Not a single seat remained. Reporters packed both sides of Peachtree Street. Helicopters circled overhead. Hundreds stood silently outside the marble entrance, holding signs that said, "Justice for Gresham. No man is above the flag." Inside, the courtroom was secured under national-level encryption. 3 defendants sat behind the defense table: Senator Byron Langston, General Silas Corwin, General Preston Kane. Their faces stone-cold, each backed by 4 attorneys and a wall of advisors. Their eyes tried to stay calm, but beneath the table, their fingers trembled. The first to take the witness stand, Lucian Graves, veteran FBI operative. He spoke with steady clarity about Project Falcon, the surveillance installation inside Sovereign Security Solutions, and the recordings he personally handed over to Naomi. When the audio was played back, Kane's voice hit the room like a gunshot. Take Gresham off the battlefield. Make it clean. Make it quiet. Leave no trace. In the jury box, 2 elderly women cried silently. A retired Marine gripped his knees tight. No one in the courtroom blinked. Then came Naomi Gresham. She entered the courtroom in full dress uniform, deep blue, adorned with 3 stars on each shoulder. Her steps firm, commanding. like a general inspecting her troops. "Please state your name and title," the prosecutor asked. Naomi lifted her chin. Her voice rang out like a bronze bell. "Naomi Clarice Gresham, Lieutenant General, United States Army. Over 32 years of service. Former commander of Middle East operations. And the target of a domestic plot designed to silence the truth." She recounted the confrontation at Halston Ridge, the filthy holding cell, the cold stare of Officer Brent Halvorsen, and the mocking laughter of Neil Draper. Then she paused, took a deep breath. "What kept me from falling to my knees wasn't strength. It was knowing, if I fell, there would be no one left to stand." Nia Tucker was the next to testify. She wore plain clothes, but her back was straight, like she was still saluting the flag. She told the court about internal documents being altered, about watching officers order detentions with no legal basis, and about the night she received a threatening phone call. "Little girls like you should remember. People like Gresham end up in the ground. People like us stay in power." A sharp "oh" of outrage rippled from the crowd. The judge slammed the gavel, but no one looked away from the young woman, with steel in her eyes. The biggest shock came from the other side. Officer Mitchum, one of the men who had once held Naomi in custody, took the stand. "You wish to amend your statement?" the prosecutor asked. Mitchum nodded, pulled a folded paper from his jacket. "This is a transcript from a meeting between Kane and Halvorsen. I recorded it, secretly, because I stopped trusting the chain of command. They didn't just want to silence Gresham. They planned a fake accident to kill her niece." The courtroom exploded. Mitchum, once considered complicit, had just become the key witness, who tore down the entire wall of defense. The jury took just 3 hours to deliberate. Guilty on all charges: conspiracy to commit treason, abuse of authority, endangering national security, financial concealment, political assassination. Langston silent. Corwin calm on the outside. Kane smirking like it still wasn't real. But Naomi, as she stepped out of the courtroom, turned back toward Kane. Her eyes didn't burn with rage. There was no triumph, only a light, a steady flame lit in darkness, unshaken and unextinguishable. 3 months later, on a brilliant October afternoon, the south lawn of the White House stood still. White chairs lined the path to the podium. Behind it, the U.S. flag fluttered in the soft autumn breeze. On the main stage, a cherrywood desk had been placed carefully, where President Lyle Harmon prepared to sign one of the most sweeping justice reform bills since the Rodney King era. The name of the legislation? The Blake Tucker Act. The president looked toward the front row, where 2 women sat side by side, Lieutenant General Naomi Gresham and Nia Tucker, now serving as acting director of a National Police Ethics Commission. Their faces were generations apart, but their resolve was the same. One, the unbreakable force from the battlefield. The other, the uncompromising conscience from within the system. With this act, the president said, every law enforcement agency, from county to federal, will be held to strict ethical standards, undergo regular psychological evaluations, and submit to independent oversight. No one will ever again use a badge to hide behind violence. After thunderous applause, a fountain pen engraved with the words, "United by Justice," was handed to both Naomi and Nia. In Asheville, Jeremiah Cole, once head of internal investigations, now led a new organization, the Cross Sharp Foundation, named in honor of 2 innocent lives lost. Virginia Cross, former CIA analyst, and Elijah Sharp, an investigative journalist who vanished for speaking the truth. But Cross Sharp was more than just a legal support center for victims of police violence. It had become a national institute for public ethics, where every new officer was required to complete a program called Power with Dignity. At its opening ceremony, Jeremiah spoke. No one is born to stand against a badge, but when a badge is given to the wrong hands, silence becomes complicity. We are here to protect the people, and to protect the institution of law enforcement from the darkness within itself. Behind the podium, Naomi stood quietly. She didn't need to be remembered as a hero, but she hoped that every generation after Every young woman named Tucker would grow up in America where justice was no longer a luxury, but a default. 2 years later, on a quiet April morning at Arlington National Cemetery, the church bells rang across the still blue sky. Rows of wooden chairs draped in black lined both sides of a white stone path. At age 64, Lieutenant General Naomi Gresham walked slowly between honor guards from the Marines and the Army. Every step she took, every line on her face, with a record of years spent refusing to bow before injustice. That day, Naomi officially retired, but not in silence. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs presented her with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, not just for her military service, but, in the words of the citation, for rewriting a part of the Constitution through a life of action. A month later, at Ashwood Memorial Park, crowds poured in like waves. At the center stood a solid bronze statue, 12 feet high. Naomi, in handcuffs, head held high, eyes unflinching. Beneath it, these words were etched into stone. Justice served when justice is challenged. Humanity must become its definition. It was not just a statue of a woman, but a monument to a nation that once knelt before its mistakes and had the courage to rise. As for Autumn Gresham, once the target of an assassination, she had become the new face of a changing America. At 28, she led Next Generation Justice, a national coalition of young people of color, veterans, law students, and survivors of state violence. At a TED talk in Chicago, Autumn said, "My grandmother once told me, justice isn't found in books. It's found in the choices people make when no one's watching. And I've chosen, just like she did." Naomi still lived in Elmsworth, in a small house with a window facing the pines. She didn't use social media. She didn't want titles. She grew lavender and hand-wrote letters to young women in uniform, mentoring them from afar. One summer afternoon, in a letter to Autumn, she wrote just one line: "Justice doesn't need noise to be heard, but when it speaks, let it carry the conscience of a generation." And so, Naomi Gresham's journey came to a close, not as a victor, but as a mirror that never fades. This time, justice stood firm.